Good day, BS Math 11. So, upon the discussion on the globalization phenomenon, we will now proceed to discussing the impacts of globalization on communication. But first, what do we mean by the word globalization? Globalization is a word that has broad meaning or broad definition. But according to Scholte of 1997, there are different ways to define what globalization actually means. First is that globalization is the mover of change, and the other one is that globalization is the result of other changes. We can say that globalization is indeed a mover of change because globalization increased interactions on national borders. Or in simple words, globalization and internalization are identical. So why did we say that internalization and communication are identical? Internalization, by definition, is a process of developing adaptable products so that the products can be viewed and distributed across countries belonging to different cultures. And on the other hand, globalization implies the augmented graphical movements of the goods and services across the boundaries of the country. So these two are different words, but they are still considered identical or similar to one another. And then the other definition about the globalization is also true because globalization invokes the notion of reduced impediments to mass trade, travel, communicative, and financial interactions. We can also say that globalization is a result of other changes because it expands international economic and political activities and also continuously increasing trade between nations. So these two given definitions, according to Scholte, is the deep definition of globalization. So in simple terms, globalization is a word to describe the process of interaction and integration among a country and its people for a common goal. Now that we have discussed the globalization, we will just simply recap the definition of communication from the report of the previous group. So, communication is simply the process of exchanging information between individuals, regardless of the medium used, or how the information is being passed from the sender to the receiver. There are several components of communication, but we will just discuss the four basic components of the communication, namely the sender, the receiver, the message, and also the interpretation, which refers to the interpretation on both ends, the sender and the receiver. First is the sender, which is the one who sends or transmits the message. And then the receiver will receive the message, or it is the individual that receives the message from the sender. Number 3 is the message or the information that is being conveyed through words, signals, or action that is being sent by the sender to its receiver. And interpretation, which refers to the interpretation on both ends, refers to how the sender and the receiver interpret and understand the message or the information that is being conveyed. In David Ingram's article entitled The Impact of Globalization on Communication Skills Development, stated that communication skills development has always been an important factor of success in business. But the influence of globalization and cross-cultural interaction in recent years and decades has impacted the types of communication skills needed in dramatic ways. With this information, today, the people should understand the need to be aware of the impacts of globalization on communication in order to properly utilize the growing interdependence between the world's economies and culture that is affecting the way of our communication or the manner on how we communicate to one another. So now we will be discussing the impacts of globalization on communication. Namely, number 1, the widespread communication. Number 2 It reduces cultural barriers. Number 3, it creates a global village. Number 4, it increased business opportunities. And number 5, it introduced us to virtual interactions. Number 1, the widespread communication. Widespread means far-reaching, and for years, emails was used only by computer programmers and technophiles. It was hard to imagine back then how widespread the phenomenon of digital communication would become, and this is because of the globalization. Globalization introduced us to the use of technology in spreading information and way of communication from letters and newspapers, magazines, internets, and social media platforms, which has immensely helped each one of us to communicate without considering the distance in between. Number 2, it reduces cultural barriers. So many people perceive culture to be the root of communication challenges, and when people from two different cultures try to exchange information, the way they speak, their body language, or their mannerisms can be interpreted differently by the other person. The way people approach problems and how they participate in communities is all influenced by culture. And globalization has made it possible. And for example, for someone in Japan to understand how someone in the US goes about their day, with television and movies and internets, cultural barriers are becoming less prevalent. And being able to communicate effectively and frequently with colleagues or friends across the planet helps people understand each other's cultures a little better. Number 3, globalization creates a global village. So, how is that even possible? The global village is created when distance and isolation no longer matter because the people are being connected by technology. Widespread telephone, internet, and other social media platform access have been life-changing for many people across the world, especially in those developing countries. Globalization and global communication have made it easier to see people on the other side of the world as their neighbors instead of a stranger from a faraway land or from another country. Number 4, globalization increased business opportunities. So, through globalization, technology made it easier to connect with suppliers and customers all over the world, and also to streamline those relationships through improved ordering, shipment tracking, and so on. With this kind of communication technology, many businesses are able to take advantage of opportunities in different countries or even in cities, improving the economic outlook on a global level. With the help of globalization on communication, information itself can be transferred as a valuable business asset from one country to another. This has the effect of making everyone's operations more modern and efficient, regardless where they are located. And number 5, globalization introduced to us virtual interactions. So globalization has impacted virtual interaction in several ways, such as in cultural exchange where individuals are able to engage with people from different cultures, promoting cross-cultural understanding. Another example is that globalization has also fostered collaboration and innovation through virtual interaction, where professionals from different countries all over the world can collaborate on projects, share ideas, and develop innovative solutions. And the most common is that through globalization, the form of education and learning is revolutionized by providing access to online courses and virtual classrooms. So that's all for the impacts of globalization on communication.